All right. Hey, everyone. So, as we wrap up our discussion about competing internationally, globally, how it's different competing in foreign markets as opposed to at home, it really, we said we were going to come back to this question, but the big looming question that we have not yet addressed is if we're going to enter into these foreign markets, should we compete differently when we do so? Should we take different competitive strategic approaches in different markets? Is that something that we should be doing? Well, one of the most significant strategic issues that firms really face when they compete in these foreign markets is that very decision. Should we vary our strategy and our competitive approach to fit our specific market conditions or buyer preferences in each country? Or do we employ essentially the same strategy in all companies where we're going to be present? Well, we have essentially three potential options for us here. What we call this localized multi-country strategy. Basically, you can think of this as think locally, act locally. We have the global strategy where think globally, act globally, or we can employ a hybrid strategy as we become very comfortable with, where we think globally, but we got to act locally. So essentially, let's just keep in mind that from a localized multi-country strategy, the more that, like, one of the best signals to us is the more that our competitive strategy varies from country to country, the more that our overall strategy is just a collection of those localized country strategies, and the more that we're doing this localized multi-country strategy idea, right? Hybrid is probably where a lot of us are moving toward any longer. But the reason where each of these may be like a good idea as an example would be like this localized idea. Maybe when there are big differences between preferences between the countries that we're a part of, and there are meaningful competitive differences between them, or let's say there are super highly regulated distribution channels or highly regulated specialized governmental requirements, doing things based off of like taking high consideration for local considerations might just be our best bet. However, a global strategy might be just might make equally as much sense when we're trying to capitalize off economies of scale, right? If our brand is strongly consistent across those different markets and we are known for that consistency in that sense, nothing wrong at all with employing that global strategy approach. Now, the hybrid might be when the big things are important, but the little details can be adjusted, right? And there are a lot of situations where this might be the case. But just thinking of a situation where maybe we're in some situation where really the big thing, maybe like your service or things like that, is the important thing, right? Customers have come to know that the reason they use you is for your excellent customer support, and the rest is just kind of details, like the slight differences in products or the way that they're distributed or advertised or different things like that is not as important. A hybrid strategy may be a great opportunity for you because you remain unwavering on those big things, but those little details, those are the things that can be adjusted across them. So, how do we build this global competitive advantage? We kind of come back to, because as we've talked an awful lot about competitive advantage. Well, we can gain competitive advantage across borders, right? In a couple of different ways. But basically, the thing that we want to keep in mind when we think about building a global competitive advantage is firms that compete internationally or globally can pursue competitive advantage in world markets by basically just locating their value chain activities in whatever nations prove to be most advantageous. This is one of the major advantages for us, and this can be a great source of competitive advantage globally for us, right? Do we want to, gaining that cross-border competitive advantage can just be that simple. We should locate facilities or value chain activities in countries that have lower costs or have greater product differentiation. depending on what kind of value we offer. Or on the other end of the spectrum, we could do a better job than our rivals at transferring those competitive capabilities across borders, right? So we want to continue to kind of ponder this idea about whether it's more advantageous to, concentrate activity in a few countries or disperse those activities, and where should we locate those activities? These are the big sources of global competitive advantage. If we are going to compete globally, make our products available everywhere, where can we locate things strategically, or where can we do things better than our other global rivals so that we can utilize those advantages we gain from becoming a global competitor, and use those in ways that people who are strictly in domestic markets, they just can't do those because they don't have access to the scale, distribution, resources, capabilities, whatever it is that we gain an advantage from competing globally. We have to use whatever is in our reality in that sense to our advantage so that we can essentially, like it says here, turn those elements about the new reality of our business into a competitive advantage globally when doing business. So this gives you some ideas here. We won't exhaust all of these, but some ideas of when we should concentrate our efforts and when we should disperse them, right? So a lot of these are going to go along lines we've already talked about, right? Looking for places that are going to allow you scale or some advantage. These are where we concentrate, our efforts, whereas dispersing our efforts are going to be, situations where we may need to create the product close to its end user, because they may be perishable or things like that, or maybe strategically, advantageous for us to hedge against the major risks. Like we've seen a lot of global supply chain efforts that have been just dragged through the mud recently. It's been very difficult. Some of the supply chain elements globally, those businesses who are operating locally, it's not to say that they didn't realize the same troubles, but they probably didn't realize them to the same extent. And that's an advantage for them, right? They have people on the ground. They have processes, production, distribution in that same market. They're more able to take advantage of the localized supply chain that they have, and not fall as victim to needing to get things from other countries, moved all around, whatever is holding those kinds of things up. As of right now, what's becoming extremely important, right, is this whole consideration for the amount that it just costs because of shipping, because of gas, all those kinds of things. So sometimes it is good for us just to concentrate our efforts, when one specific country is going to allow us to, scale our production and distribution and then move it elsewhere. If we can capitalize off of arbitrage by making something, acquiring it someplace really cheap and selling it for more somewhere else, it might be better that we just concentrate a lot of our efforts in one place and disperse it from there. But there are a lot of different considerations we might take into account here. We have to know our organization's specifics and make the right call in that sense. And there is no one right answer to all of that, right? So one way that we can safeguard against this is just kind of lastly discuss this idea about profit sanctuaries. I'm trying to establish a profit sanctuary if we can, right? And this is just, we have at least one country market where we as an organization, we earn really substantial profits because we're really strong, or we have a really protected position there, or something like that, that allows us to get better earnings in one country as opposed to others. In most cases, our biggest and most strategically crucial profit sanctuary is going to be our home market, our home country, right? International and global firms, they very well may enjoy profit sanctuary status in multiple nations. Nations where they have some strong competitive position that's not threatened by another organ or by another firm. They may have extremely big sales volumes in one nation, or just get really attractive profit margins within one, national market. So the value of competing globally is really that you'll have more possible profit sanctuaries than if you just compete in one market, right? Because one market is just going to constrain you to an absolute maximum of one. And this is a competitive advantage for us as a firm, absolutely, because obvious reasons. I mean, if I can be uber profitable in several places and not just one, isn't that a good thing from a business standpoint? Absolutely, right? So the whole thing that we want to remember is when we attack, we can either choose to attack our rivals' profit sanctuaries so that they have to spend money to defend their weaknesses, right? Drive up our competitors' costs. That can be one option for us. Or, we can strategically dump our goods into our rivals' markets at a cut rate price, so they can't really do anything to counteract the new demand that we generate at this low cost and screw up, all the process that they have in place and the assumptions that they've made on their future projections. So we can do a lot of these different things. We either can choose to, attack those profit sanctuaries for our rivals, or, take a number of different strategic approaches in order to try to cut down the margins that they enjoy in those areas. A lot of the time, they are great places sometimes for us to focus our effort from an offensive standpoint, but just understanding that this is a definite source of one of the places we can gain competitive advantage strategically over our rivals is see where we can establish these profit sanctuaries, because by far they are the locations that are in our absolute best interest as a global competitor.